welcome everyone. Thanks so much for joining us today's webinar and taking time out of your busy schedule to learn more about Wine Grenade. My name is Hamish Black, and our presenters today are Wine Grenade. Before we go into the presentation, just let me mention a few housekeeping details. To start with, if you could keep your audio on mute just through the session would be fantastic. The session should go for about 20-25 minutes. Will be followed by a Q&A session. And for the Q&A, if you want to put any questions, just add that to the chat forum. After the session is finished, we will be recording, so we'll be able to send that to you probably tomorrow. And there will be a short survey. If you could complete that to give us a little bit of feedback, we'd really appreciate that. So on that note, I'll hand over to Mark.
Well, thanks, Hamish, and welcome again, everyone. I love the fact that we have this small, intimate group for the afternoon session. We had a few more people in the morning, but I hope this means we can ask some questions as we go. So, if there's anything put into the chat, Hamish can raise it with me. And I think with this group size, I'm sure we'll have a few good questions as we go. So I'm the new CEO at Wine Grenade. And we're going to talk about micro-oxygenation that we do in close partnership with Classic Oak, so with Dave and Hamish and the sales team throughout Australia. What we're going to cover may sound a bit formal for our group size at the moment, but just wanted to let you know what you're getting into for the next 20 minutes. We're going to touch on when and why you'll MOX. Then we're going to go into some really good detail about the Wine Grenade system and really why we think and some of our customers think that the Wine Grenade system stands out in the market. We're going to get into the next really important stuff for people on this call. If you're making wine, around the price and how much does that look like if you're going to treat a tank of wine with our system. And then Dave is going to get into Fox Creek trials where we did some tastings and of course Q&A. But like I said, fire your questions in as we go. All right, when you think about MOX, traditionally and using it in your winery, a few things come to mind, right? You think about, well, I'm going to use a stainless steel tank, so I'm going to integrate an oak component. You think, well, maybe I need to stabilize the color a little bit more. And then you can also look at things like building the mid palate, reducing any reductive aromas that come off in the ferment, decrease astringency, and of course, bring your product to market faster. One of the other things, unfortunately, that typically goes along with MOX is the units available on market right now. So they're usually big. They're usually bolted to a floor. You usually need a Sparky in there to hook it up with you. And they're a permanent fixture and structure in your winery. What I want to show you is how we've changed that at Wine Grenade and the unit that we've brought to market. We think we come in at a very cost-competitive price for a single tank MOX solution. And to do that, and to really get the best out of a MOX system, is we use something called a permeable membrane and a float. And we'll go into all those details in the next couple slides, and we'll show you what the float and membrane look like. As well, we'll show you why I think the Wine Grenade system is easy to use, flexible, and portable. All right, let's keep going. So this is our Wine Grenade. You'll be able to see in your video, it'll be small on your screen, so I'll hold it really close to my camera. This is it. It's about the size of a lunchbox, or about the size of my head, actually. A lot more in there than my head, I think, but a couple kilograms. And this, in the palm of my hand, is your oxygen supply for this device. So it's the same one in the picture, single-use piercing adapter. You screw it in. There's only one way to do it. You can't get it wrong. And when you're done, take it out and replace it. This device is Wi-Fi connected through an antenna at the top. There's a power supply as well. It will run off of batteries for 3 to 4 weeks. So in the event your winery loses power for any reason, this box will keep MOXing your wine for 3 to 4 weeks without being plugged in again. And key to this technology is the active float and the semi-permeable membrane. And they click together. And What happens is as we put oxygen into the system, the float rises and falls, and it rises and it falls. And we're going to tell you why that's important in a couple slides and how that leads to a very even and uniform mixing of oxygen in your tank. All right, quick tech specs. What can this unit do? Well, we say it can comfortably treat up to 50,000 liters of wine at one time, so one tank. You can release a rate of oxygen to very precisely, this is accurate to within a fraction of a percent, from 0.5 milligrams liter per month to 5 milligrams liter per month. So anything from a very gentle, let's get rid of some adductive aroma profiles, to let's stabilize some color and build some mid-palate like in a Shiraz or a Cab. We've covered the oxygen canister, fits into the palm of your hand, 22.5 grams of oxygen. Everything's food grade that contacts your wine. And really, for us, it's about ease of use and precision. And we'll get into those in the next couple slides. So ease of use, it's as simple as it shows up. You plug it in, and if you can connect your laptop to your Wi-Fi, you can connect this to your Wi-Fi. It takes about 10 to 15 minutes, and away you go. It's that simple, and you control it right from your phone through our web portal, or you can control it on a website through the same portal. And just to show you what that looks like on the old smartphone, this is what will load up, and you can give access to anybody in your winery. It's not just you. It can be anybody you want. And you can control your release rate, change it whenever you want. The whole unit updates 15 minutes. So if the unit goes without power, no Wi-Fi, no signal, then that's going to mean it runs on that last setting you put in. And you get things like the cellar temperature, the wine temperature, oxygen remaining, all those great things. And then you can change the parameters. So we can go in and we can monitor it too to make sure everything's going great. Now, it's important to mention as well, we talked about Wi-Fi, but what about if you don't have Wi-Fi in your winery? Well, if you have no Wi-Fi, but you have cell phone signal, instead you just get a little 4G router or a 4G hotspot, and it can run completely off that. The amount of data this sends every 15 minutes is like the size of a text message. It's not much at all. So if you get a gig, half a gig for a year on one of those cards, you'll be set for the whole year. So it's a real good cost-effective alternative if you don't have Wi-Fi. All right, let's keep going. The kind of things we like to send you alerts about. These are the just in case things. Your oxygen is running low. So when you're below 20% from this oxygen canister, if your battery's getting below 20%, things like if we haven't seen a device in a while, like 6 to 12 months, we like to let you know, just in case you maybe forgot where the device is and you want to use it. And if there's a leak or if there's a low flow error. So if there's somehow not this precise amount of oxygen getting into your wine, we'll let you know, because what's in here is the most important thing to get an even distribution into your wine. The all important pricing. Well, in partnership with Classic Oak, so with Dave and Hamish, we have an introductory limited offer for $1,500 for the device, then plus the cost for your consumables. And look at how much you'll use for the consumables will be depending on your mock system. And we'll give you a couple examples of what that looks like from our trials. And if you want to look at, let's say, a 20,000 liter tank of wine. So we can just run through those numbers quite quickly with you, and I can send this to you after. You get a copy of this presentation. So let's say you want to do 20,000 liters of wine, 3 months, and this is an average rate. Let's say you want to stabilize some color, or you just want to work on that mid-palate a little bit post-malolactic fermentation. Well, if you take the Wine Grenade purchase price over 5 years, because that's how long we think the device will last you. We know the device will last you. You'll spend about that much in consumables per season, and that results in just under 8 cents per liter in addition to your cost of goods sold, and per bottle, that's just under 6 cents a liter. And I can send you all the calculations. There's no secrets at all here. So we think it is a very cost-effective way to deliver oxygen to your wine.
Mark, can I ask a question, please?
Yes, Dave.
Yeah, just in terms of the cost of goods, looking at that, of course, if you used it on 2 or perhaps 3 other tanks in that same year, that would drive down your cost of goods as well, wouldn't it?
Oh, yeah, very, very good point. It would indeed, yes. Yep. So you can, this is actually a good question we had in the morning. If you want to take this unit, which is super portable, right? There's nothing really holding it down. There's spots to mount it on the back, and I'll show you full screen later. You can pick it up, take the whole thing out, maybe adjust the length of your membrane because it comes in 2-meter sections, and then plunk it down into the next tank of wine, and away you go. Nothing's permanent. There's no bolts involved. Totally portable. All right, next 2-3 slides, I just want to show you a little bit more information about why we think the membrane diffusion and active float technology, which we've patented, is the best way to deliver oxygen to your wine. So if you think about a traditional MOX system, they use a bubbler or a sinter. About a 10 micron bubble gets put in. With our system, the silicone membrane tube that I'm holding up now, this produces no bubbles. So as this tube goes up and goes down in your wine, you're essentially wiping away the oxygen from the surface of this tube to make direct contact with your wine. So that means all the oxygen that's being supplied in this small canister is being used directly, and nothing's being wasted, and there's no oxygen going to the surface. So to drive that home a little bit more is that this system doesn't use any bubbles. The oxygen is being used directly in contact with the wine. You're maintaining an even distribution, so you're not getting any hyperox, and you're getting no oxygen bubbles in that headspace. So you're not creating any environment up there for other nasties to grow. And the last slide, a bit of science. I promise this is the only science you'll have to look through. Is when oxygen comes into the tube, we set it at a certain pressure. It's not that high. So it's coming in, and then it has to go through the semi-permeable membrane. Now, if that was the end of it, the oxygen wouldn't really do much. It would just sit at the surface. It would just accumulate at the surface. But because we've patented this float, and as we know, the float will go up, and in about an hour's time, the float comes down. And that's just like a windshield wiper working on your car, pushing the rain away. It's wicking that oxygen away, putting it in direct contact in that reaction zone with your wine. So all the oxygen going in is being used directly by the wine. Nothing's being wasted. So you're getting a much more precise control of your MOX. And because we like to hook this thing up to everything, we decided, why not MOX barrels? Seems like a very odd thing to do when potentially MOX is replacing some of your barrel program. Not all, but potentially some. We never thought of this until we got asked by a customer in France who did 12 by 1,000 liter barrels, and then in the US again with 12 by 225 barrels. So your standard barrel. Both were old barrels. Both were 3-4 years. So the oak component was potentially depleted, and there was very limited ingress into those barrels. So we supplemented at a rate of 2.5 grams. One of the companies did it for 6 months. The other one did it for 8 months. And they had some very exceptional wine come out from those barrels. So good way to keep those barrels, get a little bit of use out of them, or just use them as a separate container. Now, equally exciting for me, I love this stuff as much as our core product is the 3 products we're looking to bring to market in the next year or 2. The first one on the left side of your screen is the scale up. We know the current unit I'm holding right now is limited to about a 50,000 liter tank. We're right now testing a scale up device on a 120,000 liter tank of New Zealand grown Merlot. It's going to be in there for 6 months at 2 milligrams per liter. The only major difference you can probably see on your screen is the oxygen supply. So you notice there's no canister there, and we've hooked up just to a BOC tank with a regulator. We step down the pressure to what the box needs, and away she goes. So that's a solution we're looking towards to bring to the market. We're not quite ready, but when we get there, we'll be talking to Dave and Hamish and everybody involved. The second very exciting thing I think we're bringing to the market is the sensor pack, and that's aimed to give more precise control and insights into your ferment. Essentially, a bundle of sensors that is going to go into your tank during ferment. And it's nothing crazy, it's nothing new, but it are those key insights that we've been told people are looking. So things like temperature, Brix, dissolved oxygen, optical density, and reductive potential, so ORP. Potentially, we would also like to include SO2, H2S, and volatile acidity. But key to me to understand what people need, I can only talk to so many wineries at once before they stop opening the doors, I guess, and ask them all these crazy questions, is in the follow-up survey, if you have 2 minutes, it would be hugely appreciated. If you could just, there'd be a question in there where you rank what parameters you would like to see monitored during primary ferment. And when I see, I mean on your phone. So you can either manage by exception if something starts to go out of a confidence interval, or you can drill down on a particular ferment and get more information from that ferment. Third coming to market is, I wish my favorite whiskey in the world, Edradour, would let us work for them, but it's Scotch, so they're not allowed to do this kind of stuff, is aged spirits. And we have a trial in the US right now looking at accelerated aging for US whiskey, so like Tennessee whiskey, bourbon, and those things like that. And now I'd like to hand over to Dave so he could tell you about the trial at Fox Creek. Dave.
Yeah, thanks, Mark. Good afternoon, everybody. Yeah, so we into late 2018, we conducted 2 trials, really as a proof of concept from Classic Oak's perspective with regard to Wine Grenade, to see if we'd like to put our hand up to be the sole distributor of the product. So we did 2 trials. One was at Fox Creek Wines, the other was at Tintara, so both in McLaren Vale. And I'm just going to review with you the Fox Creek trial. So one is a 10,000 litre tank of McLaren Vale Shiraz. The wine had completed Malo. It had been sulphured up, and over a 6-month period, we delivered oxygen at 2 milligrams per litre per month. Thanks, Mark. So at a modest to moderate rate. Here you can see a shot of Wine Grenade sitting on top of the tank. You can actually see at the end of that black cable, which is the assembly of both the sensor and also the oxygen membrane, you can see a silicon bung that's actually going in where the tank breather was removed, just unscrewed, and the bung inserted. So that's typically the way that the Wine Grenade finds its way into the tank. So you can go from tank to tank quite easily. And in this case, at 2 milligrams per litre per month for a 10,000 litre tank, the oxygen cylinder was changed approximately every 28 days. So 2 days before it needed changing, the winemaker would receive an email on his phone telling him he needed to do it, and get another reminder every day until he'd done it. In terms of charging, you can't see it there, but they would just connect it to, every month they would connect 240 volt extension cord up to the unit and leave it overnight to recharge for the next month. Next slide, please. Wine analysis was done on the Fox Creek trial over the 6-month period. Essentially, I was interested in seeing any change in VA and sulfur over that period. As you can see there was no real change at all in VA. There was sulfur depleted over time, and after 5 months, there was a sulfur addition of 20 parts per million. So I would call that a normal exercise in the maturity of the wine intake. We saw no other significant variation in analysis at all. Next slide, please. Sensory analysis. So we used a couple of panels. So winemakers from Fox Creek and also from Tintara looked at the wines. And we've also, then about 5 months later, we showed the wines to 22 participants at a workshop at AWITC. So a total of 25 tasting results were included in this trial. The tasters were each given 9 attributes and asked to score them as least favourable through to most favourable. Next slide, please, Mark. And on the radar plot there, you can see in blue is the control and yellow is the wine grenade. And I guess the results showed a strong preference for wine grenade. So they showed us what we thought mocks should do to a wine. You can see that bitterness and astringency were both more pronounced in the control. Fruitiness was judged to be similar, but importantly, in terms of the mid palate, mouthfeel, weight, roundness, were all seen to be enhanced in the treatment. And then we asked for an overall indication from the tasters of quality and complexity. And again, there was quite a strong preference for the treatment. I should add at this point that I didn't do colour measurements. As I said, we did this for proof of concept, but in terms of colour, I can only offer my empirical observations in that when the initial tastings were done, I think colour was probably brighter and perhaps a slightly deeper hue in the controls, in both trials. But then after 6 months, as we continued to look at these wines in bottle, and continuing after that, I believe the wine grenade treatment colour has demonstrated its stability and now has a better colour and hue than the control. Again, that's my empirical observation. Next slide. So conclusions. Well, I think what I've just said before points to how well we thought wine grenade performed. The winemaker at Fox Creek is Ben Tanzer. Ben was doing this on a, if you like, a premium Shiraz, which may be a brand champion, if you like, that sells for around that $25 to $30 in reasonable size volume. So an important wine for them. And he was looking to increase maturation, so just move maturation along. And from his comments there, you can see he was happy that the product did that and made the wine more bottle ready. So it achieved what he wanted. I guess just to recap, I guess on a couple of points that Mark made earlier, to me, the main, and I've used mocks in a number of circumstances before with the traditional mock system, where the sinter goes into the tank, goes towards the bottom of the tank floor. You might then lift it up maybe half a metre or so off the tank bottom, and the sinter produces 10 or 5 micron bubbles that come up in little pinpricks ultimately into the surface of the tank, in the ullage space of the tank. And that's fine, but you don't get the whole volume of wine. You don't get a homogeneous result. If you go to the sample tap, you're only getting, if you consider the oxygen's in a plume, it goes up towards the tank top. So one thing I mentioned is the active float and the homogeneity of the treatment, which I think is a positive thing. The other thing I'd mention is reiterate on is how the O2 is delivered via the membrane, so that it passes from a gaseous state into a dissolved state as soon as it reaches the wine solution. So it is consumed. I think that's very important. And the final thing would be the portability and connectability, which makes it a very easy device to use. So yeah, that's all I had to say. So I'll pass back to Hamish. I'm not sure if there's any questions there, Hamish.
Yeah, no, thanks, Dave. Thanks, Mark. Well, that just ends our formal session. Now we've got a Q&A. We've had a couple of questions come in, and Mark, we'll start with this first question regarding the membrane. Can I use the membrane tubing on more than one tank of wine, and when does it need to be replaced, or does it need to be replaced?
Yeah, no, good question, Hamish. I'm just going to flick here so I can show a bigger screen on some of the things we have. Yeah, we recommend you replace this after every season. So if you want to pick it up and put it in another tank and keep going hard that season, then that's no problem. But we do recommend this is replaced as a consumable every season. And Dave, you had some thoughts on that as well.
Yeah, look, I think it's fine to reuse, but it's just a matter of hygiene. So I think it's a common sense approach. You should be going from one tank to another tank almost immediately. I think you could. I haven't done it, but I imagine you could store it in a solution of citric and SO2, a PMS citric solution. But I wouldn't do that for more than a week or two before going to the next tank. The best thing would be go to tank. I imagine that most wineries would have their tanks queued up that they could go to, whether they're 5 kL tanks or 4 kL tanks, 10s or 20s, whatever. And then as you approach vintage, most things like that tend to cease from the previous vintage, and that's an appropriate time to change the membrane over. So every 12 months.
Okay, thanks, Dave. Another question for you, Mark. We noticed, or someone noticed in the trial for Fox Creek, Dave mentioned the tanks are outside. How waterproof are the actual units themselves? Would you have a casing or?
Yeah, good question. So I'm glad we switched to full screen here. So in there, you can't see because it's sealed. There is like a gasket, that's in there. So they're not dunk proof, I don't know why you take it to the beach for a swim, but just in case you do, don't do that. But splash proof, no problem. Once everything's buttoned up, and everything's plugged in, it's pretty good. But I would recommend outdoors. You just put a box over it, or put it in another stainless steel box or something that you got around, just to keep the sun off it, just to keep any excess water off of it. Yep.
Mark, just to add on to that, in McLaren Vale, and I'm sure other areas have the same issue, we've got a problem with cockatoos. So there's plenty of examples of fixed MOX systems on top of exposed tank farms that have had every bit of rubber and plastic ripped off them. So if it's around here, I like the idea of, even if it's just a PVC covering, I think would be a good thing outside.
That's a good idea. Yeah.
Mark, you talked about the volumes of tanks that we can treat with the wine grenade. Presently, we're sort of recommending around the 50,000 litre mark. And you touched on it briefly, but what for the future we're going to be able to treat larger capacities up, 100,000 plus?
Yeah, absolutely. Whoops, bit of echo. Sorry. Absolutely. What we're working on is that scale up. So we're trialing pretty much this unit, but instead of the O2 canister like this screwing in, it's a BOC tank that goes in running off of, it's got a kilogram or 2 kilograms of oxygen in there to use. So we're working on bringing that product to market. And when we do, we'll let everybody know well in advance. And you're looking at tank sizes of 200, 300,000 liter that we want to be able to treat for everybody in their winery. Yeah.
Okay. I think you touched on this briefly, but someone's asked again. Wi-Fi coverage. They've got an issue with Wi-Fi, and the other question that they've put is, what happens if they get an outage for a week or two? Will the system kick on? How long does it actually last on battery? And how do you actually charge it?
Oh, exactly.
So a couple of questions there.
That's happened a couple times with our wineries, and we've had 2 different cases where one's run on Wi-Fi, so there's a little antenna that goes in the top, a little bunny ear, or you can put it on a 4G. Look, if you have a sort of Wi-Fi dead spot in your winery, then a Wi-Fi booster works just as well. You plug it in and, extend your range sort of another 40 to 60 meters with one of those. If the power goes out, so if this is fully charged up, you just plug it in there. It's just normal power coming out of the wall. And once it's charged, it will run for 3 to 4 weeks. No problem. It will run on the last settings you put into this unit. So it updates every 15 minutes. If you change it on your phone, it will take those settings, update it, and keep chugging away. But to power it up, you can either just, run a lead, plug it in, or, that's the best way to do it, actually.
Cool. Just another question of interest to me. At the moment, the unit currently measures wine temperature. Seems like a great opportunity to look at other wine attributes. What's being done in this space?
Yeah, really good question, Hamish. That's the second stage of our product development, and I'll show you what goes in your tank here. It's nothing fancy. It's just the bung, and that's a thermocouple that goes down. So that measures your wine temperature near the top. But I really, would appreciate your guys' feedback in that follow-up survey. There'll be a list of parameters in there that hopefully you can put a little rank to say, I love, Mark, if we could measure VA. I love, SO2 once a month. Oh, that'd be perfect. Or if we need daily bricks, or we need to know every few hours for our temperature during ferment. That's what we want to be able to put onto this unit. It's got a lot of IoT smarts in it that we haven't fully used yet, and we plan to with those sensors. But feedback, yeah, 100%. That's what we need.
Okay. Well, on that note, it was we've finished the Q&A session. Unless anyone's got any last-minute questions, I'd just like to thank everyone for attending today's webinar. And as a reminder, we will be sending a survey out, which Mark's alluded to. If you could complete that and give us a wee bit of feedback, we'd appreciate that. If there's any questions that you think in the next day or so, feel free to email Classic Oak or Mark at Wine Grenade. All the details are online. And a special thanks to Mark and to Dave for their presentation. And on behalf of Classic Oak, thank you again for joining us today, and enjoy the rest of your day. Thanks very much.